This is going to be recorded because this is very important. So, John, this is a place where you have been years ago. And can you guess where were you that evening?
I think I was in Milan, wasn't I?
No, let me give you some tips. This is Giovanni Formentin that joined us. Hello, Giovanni.
Hi, Francesca, John, everybody.
Don't tell John where you were. This is Gabriele, and this is Carlotta. And maybe this can help you. This is wine.
Civitavecchia.
Yes, yes. We were in Civitavecchia in Lazio in Italy for the past course. Okay, good, good. Now, this is to prove clearly that John exists. Another important thing is to prove that John eats. Okay, John eats and he is a normal human being, and he drinks and he eats and as any other normal human being. He has doubts, yes. You know, when he explains his theories, sometimes he gets lost and has to stop and think what he's talking about, especially when nobody can follow what he's saying. So he has to come up with other ways to explain things in a simpler way. But usually he succeeds in this. And then the other thing which is important to know about John is that he tries his best to support, help, and be close to all those who has troubles and express themselves, all the frustration of doing a model, and he's always there. And the last thing, he is a very nice guy to spend an evening. And well, if he, he talks a lot, but is very pleasant. So that is the formal and academic presentation of John. And after that, I close, and I would like John to introduce this series that we are going to start today with the first case presented by William Renry that will talk after you. Okay? So you can start your presentation. Don't thank me for my introduction. You don't need to thank me.
I had no intention of thanking you for that introduction, actually, Francesca. So cheers.
Cheers. Yes.
Thank you. So, what should I say? The main purpose that we're gathered here today is not to hear from me, but to hear from William, who you're not feeling nervous or anything, are you, William? Oh, he's on mute. Yes. So, are you feeling nervous?
No, I'm okay.
Why not? Why aren't you feeling nervous?
Why? What? We didn't scare him enough.
I know.
Come on.
I know I'm talking with professionals. So.
Well, I like his attitude. So this is good. Okay. Before William tells us his sad story, because when it comes to groundwater modeling, every story is a sad story, and William's is no exception. So make sure that it's very depressing, William.
Yes.
But I just wanted to say a few words. I thought Francesca and I talked about this and thought maybe this is an opportunity just to say a few words about the way that I approach groundwater modeling. And I have to say that, the more time goes on, the less that I believe in great big complex models. But I do believe in modeling as a way of helping us make decisions. But, you know, I think a lot of money spent in the world is still paying a lot of attention to big models, you know, where people say we can simulate what happens under the ground. And once we can do that, any question you want to ask, the model will answer. And I so don't believe in that philosophy. I think, you know, and I'm speaking from experience here. I've committed just as many crimes against humanity as anyone else. But the more time goes on, the more I think we need to be smarter about how we model. And that smartness comes through the philosophy, the thought processes that we bring to modeling. And I think there's a bit of a lot of the way that modeling happens, there'll be a problem. You know, William's going to tell us some problems soon. And the knee-jerk reaction is model first, think later. Well, it's got to be the other way around. We got to think first, and maybe we'll build a model. And hopefully that model will be no more complex than what's appropriate to answer some questions. And those questions will normally pertain to how to fix up a problem, because we're not modeling for fun. No one models for fun. We're modeling because someone's got a problem. And so we're modeling to help someone fix up that problem. And the way we model should be targeted at that problem. So I've got a few slides to show, just to show what I mean. I'll take about 10 minutes and then we're handing over to William. So I have the problem, I'm going to share my screen. So
in the bottom, you have a green arrow.
Yeah, so I'm sharing my screen and then, so can you see my slide? No, you can. Oh.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so you see my slides. Okay.
Yes.
So I'll just put that there. So what I want to do is to say, just put that there. Okay. Few words on decision support groundwater modelling. Now, in Australia here, a lot of the modelling that we do has to do with mining. And it's the same all over the world. There's many issues which groundwater modelling has to address. And a lot of those issues have to do with mining, but there's a lot of others too. But I'll just use that as an example. So suppose that we've got a mine here. Can people see my mouse? Is my mouse visible?
Yes. Is the first time that you present something?
Why are you asking such a personal question?
Doesn't look. You should be used. Okay, we can see everything. We can hear you. We can see you. We can see the slides and the mouse. Thanks.
Okay, I'll proceed. So just we've got a mine here, and when you've got a mine, you've got a whole lot of problems. So for example, you've got to design a dewatering system to keep the pit dry. And not only has that dewatering system got to keep the pit dry, it's got to keep the walls of the mine stable. There'll often be issues with tailings dams. Do they leak? Are they put on top of any structural features that could take contaminants places you don't want them to go? A big issue is going to be, what's the effect of this mine on groundwater dependent ecosystems over here? And then when the mine is finished, how do you close the mine down? Do you fill that pit up with backfill the pit, or do you just leave a lake there? And they've got big repercussions, what you do, for the permanent effect that that mine's going to have, or that lake's going to have, on the surrounding hydrology. So faced with all these problems, the knee-jerk reaction is, well, let's just build a model. Let's just build a great big model, And that way we can simulate whatever happens under the ground, and we can find out. We can design a pit dewatering system. We can find out what effect the pit's going to have on this ecosystem. We can see whether, if there's any leakage from the tailings dam, whether the contaminants will go anywhere. The idea is very seductive, that if we build a big enough, complicated enough model, we can answer any question that we want. So the traditional workflow, and lots of money changes hands for this traditional workflow, is you say, okay, let's build a site conceptual model, and that'll be based on a geological model and elements of the water balance. And in a mining area, there's often a lot of geological information around. And then, okay, let's turn that into a numerical model. And it's all mining areas are complicated, so it's got to be a complicated numerical model. After all, if it's not complicated, it can't be realistic, and realistic is what we want, not, but that's what we think we want. So we build this complicated numerical model, and then we calibrate it, because if we wanted to predict the future, we can guarantee that it'll make good predictions of the future if we ensure that it fits the past. Not, but that's the theory anyway. So we calibrate our great big complex model, and then we do sensitivity analysis for reasons that no one really knows, but that's what the books say, do sensitivity analysis. And then if you're lucky these days, they might do uncertainty analysis, so that you can associate an uncertainty with the prediction that the model makes. But there's almost no need, because a model that's big, that complex, that expensive, it can't be too uncertain, and people still aren't. Anyway, they pay lip service to the fact that uncertainty analysis has to be done, and then we've got our crystal ball. Now, it's a bit fuzzy, because the answers that pop out the back end of that model aren't exactly right. There's a bit of uncertainty, we acknowledge, but it's nearly a crystal ball, and that's what we paid for, and we don't dare believe that that's what we haven't got. So what's wrong with that? Well, I think there's a lot wrong with it. It's based on a lot of wrong premises. The first wrong thing about it is that it's based on the premise that we can simulate what happens under the ground. I don't think we can. I think our efforts to simulate what happens under the ground are pretty feeble. That doesn't mean that we can't use modeling to help us make decisions, but acting under the premise that we can build a model that'll simulate what happens under the ground and answer every question we want to ask, that doesn't work. That complicated model will take a long time to run. The more detailed it is, and this is a paradox, the less you know the details of the details, the more detailed it is, the more likely some of those details are going to be wrong, and that's going to bias predictions made by that model. Well, presumably we can do uncertainty analysis, but that's difficult because it takes too long to run. It's numerically unstable. We can't history match very well. We can't use it with pest because it takes too long to run and it's numerically unstable. So in the end, we've got a numerical creature here that we know gives wrong predictions, and we have no idea how wrong those predictions are because we can't quantify uncertainty, let alone reduce it. And we're using this to make a whole lot of very expensive decisions. So that's the way things are often done. Does it work? I don't think it does. I think that this as a mechanism for helping us support decisions can be improved on a hell of a lot. And it all comes back to the way we think about this. So let's rewind. So here's all the problems we've got. More problems there than you can poke a stick at. Well, the first thing we need to do is just focus on one problem at a time. Let's not think that we can simulate all groundwater movement, all processes at all places. Let's just focus on one problem at a time, and let's build a model that's focused on that problem. And what's the model got to do? It's got to help us make a decision. And how do we make decisions? We say, well, firstly, you identify the problem, what can go wrong. And then you say, what shall I do to manage that problem? And then when I manage it, what can go wrong then? You acknowledge that you'll never quite know. You mightn't even approximately know what's going to be the outcomes of your attempted management. You've got to process all the data that you've got to try to reduce the uncertainties of predictions about your management outcomes. There'll still be uncertainty, so you'll know if and how your management system will fail. You're taking a risk, you know the risk you've got to live with, and you make the decision that minimizes risks. That's how we make a decision in every other field of life. That's how we should make a decision in environmental management. We know we can't predict the future, but if we harvest information from data, what's the definition of information? It's that which reduces uncertainty. My job in modeling is to go to where the data is, harvest information from it, make predictions of the outcomes of my proposed management schemes, and fully equipped with the uncertainty associated with the outcomes of those schemes, make a decision. As I say, fully acquainted with the risks that I'm taking. So here's my concern for the moment, the effect of this pit on that GDE. So I ask, where's the data? And the data's the stuff that's got information that I can harvest, and harvesting information reduces uncertainty. Well, there'll be some data in the dewatering rates. There might be some boreholes with water levels, a gauged stream or two. Certainly there'll be a geological model. There'll be information on recharge. That's the data. That's the source of information. So now I build a model focused on this prediction, not any of the others, this prediction. And the task of that modeling is not to simulate very well. Yes, we're going to build a simulator, but this simulator's got to be working with other software like PEST, which can do what modeling has to do to help us make decisions. That is, turn data into information and point this information at predictions that matter to management. That's the job of modeling. Simulation helps that, but we're not modeling to simulate. We're simulating so that we can harvest information so that we can make decisions. We're not simulating very well, but we can still harvest information. We can still make decisions fully acquainted with the risks that we're taking, because we can quantify uncertainty and we can reduce uncertainty. And that's why we're modeling. So to me, that's what modeling is about, not the pretentious notion that we're simulating what happens under the ground. It's focused on a problem, harvesting the information that helps me solve that problem, being fully acquainted with the risks that I'm taking when I adopt any course of management action. So quantification of uncertainty is fundamental, and reduction of uncertainty through harvesting of data is fundamental. And my modeling has to be designed from the ground up to do that. So this, forget it. For me, the workflow goes a bit more like this. Identify the issue. Just could be one of many. Where's the data? Build a model that can harvest the information that resides in this data and focus it on this prediction. So here's my simulator, focused on that prediction, working with PEST or PEST++, history matching, quantifying uncertainty, reducing uncertainty. I get information. I look at what the calibration process is telling me. I look at what the data is telling me. And often as not, I'll find that it's telling me things I didn't know. That I'm not building a model just based on a conceptual model which stays fixed. I might go and refine my conceptual model based on what I've just learned from harvesting information from data. And when that process is finally finished, I can start using that model to support management. And what's management? Well, in this case, I might think up a mine plan or a way for handling this situation here. Do I re-inject some of this water that I get from here for dewatering, perhaps upstream of this river to prevent damage to the GDE? I try it out in the model. I quantify uncertainty. Perhaps it'll work, perhaps it won't. Perhaps if I inject water closer to the point, there'll be less uncertainty. In all cases, I know the risks that I'm taking, the way that my management scheme mightn't work, and I'm normally trading that off against the expense. Normally, the more money I spend, the less uncertainty I have, but I don't spend as much money as there's always a limit on what I can spend, so I decide what risks I'm going to take. And the groundwater modeling process has to inform me of those risks so I can commit the finances to the managing of that system. Again, it's all about quantifying uncertainty, reducing uncertainty, therefore assessing risks, because I know what may go wrong, using my model to let me know exactly where I stand with respect to the risks I'm taking. And the model that does that harvests information, quantifies, reduces uncertainty, has to be sleek, fast running, no more complicated than it needs to be, and fairly and squarely built with a particular prediction in mind. So that then is the mindset that I bring to groundwater modeling. It's a little bit different from what a lot of textbooks say, and it requires the simulator used in conjunction with other software to harvest information from data. No pretense that we've got a digital replica of what happens under the ground, but a whole lot of work put into harvesting information and pointing it to where it needs to go. And for more information, there's a publication of this on the GMDSI website. So that's my little preamble. So now I've got to turn this. How do I, stop share. There we go.
Thank you, John. Apart from your Australian accent, what you said was very clear and direct. So, okay,
Excuse me, the only one here who doesn't have an accent is me. Everyone else has an accent.
That is also true, but I'm proud of my accent. So, so yes, this is the motive that brought us to propose this series of meetings. Basically, we are asking you, and William was the first to answer, to...
And thank you very much, William, by the way.
Yes, yes. And we already have another case on the pipeline, so there will be a second meeting and then hopefully many, many others. Because the key point of everything is how we translate the information that we gather on the data, the knowledge that we have about a site, all the ensemble of the knowledge which is provided by hard data and soft data inside a model. This is, no matter how many courses of numerical modeling you can follow and you can attend, but that is something which is not easy to teach. It's not, you cannot have a course that teaches you how to translate reality into a meaningful numerical model. The only hope to learn is experience. making mistakes and studying as many cases as much as you can. So this is the reason why we thought about this series, just to share experience. It's not something that guarantee that we can provide William with smart advices, so, and we won't basically, but it is.
We'll work out the answer and send him the bill. Yeah.
Yes. But the point is to think. This is a thinking exercise that we want to share, and so that one can start, and when faces his own problem, has a little bit more of experience. So this is basically why we're here, and we are glad that we had so much participation. So now William will talk to us about the case with a presentation. In the platform, you also have the full report of the place and of the problem, okay? And after the presentation, we will start the discussion, okay? Would you like to add something, John?
No, I was just going to say thank you again, William, for being for being that. Like, this is a hell of a problem, but every problem is insolvable, and this one's no different. And thank you for being the first one to step up and share it with us, William.
Thank you, Professor.
My name is not Professor. No.
Oh, he is Professor. Come on, John. You told me once that you are Professor.
No.
Is more than a professor.
Too shy.
Let's say the truth. Okay, stop.
What do you can call it?
John.
John is my name.
Yes.
Okay. So, Professor John.
All right, I'm going to give you a hard time now, William.
Yeah.
Just call him Master.
The master.
He likes being called
Master.
Master.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you can share your screen, William.
Okay, thank you. I hope everyone can see.
I can see it, yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
we're ready.
So my name was been introduced before. My name is William Mremi from Tanzania. I have this case which happened in my country. So I'll brief you the information, the problem first, and the information I have about the site. And then I will welcome all of you to discuss the possible way we can, or I can go through to solve this problem through modeling, because that's my main interest. So the title is Investigation of Groundwater Inundation. This is like a groundwater seepage from the ground in the central regional bus stand construction site in Moshi town. So, and propose the short-term and long-term solutions to the problem. So here is Tanzania. If you can see my pointer, here is Moshi. It's where there is a site, the construction site. So this is the demarcation of the area, the site itself. This is a bus stand construction site. It's the biggest in my country. It will be the second biggest bus stand in my country. It costs 27 billion Tanzanian shillings, equivalent to 115,000 US dollars to construct this site. So on 2020, it was reported in the media about the flooding in the site inside the building. Like we can see, there was something like a stream, like a spring, the water coming from the ground and flooded the whole building. It was in the middle of the construction. As you can see, this was the stage of the construction. And that is a problem. For the site itself, we can see the location of the site away, far away from the site, like 400 meters. We have a river, River Rao. And on the site itself, there was 2 wells drilled inside the site, and one well far, a little bit far from the site, like 400 meters. This the description of the site and the problem. So the objective is to understand the source of the water causing the flooding in the Moshi bus stand and provide the possible solutions through modeling. So the specific objective to attain the main objective is to map the groundwater changes in the area through modeling and to study the geology and the stratigraphy of the area, the impact of the climate, especially rainfall of the area to the groundwater fluctuation, and to identify the ideal location of the watering wells or the drain, whatever, as a solution. Maybe it can not be the solution. Maybe you can say there is another solution. So we can propose maybe these solutions from the results we get from the modeling. The geology of the area, as you can see, this is the location. It is located in the Neocene it's just recent volcanic rocks. As we have a big mountain here, the highest mountain in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro. These are the 3 peaks of Mount Kilimanjaro, and the site is just at the base of the mountain. So this mountain also lies in the East African Rift. So we expect to have a lot of structures like faults and so forth. So the aquifer itself, from the data they got from the drilling, when they drilled the 2 wells on the site, they found higher weathered rocks and fractured volcanic rocks, specifically basalts and granites. And aquifer is shallow, less than 20 meters, and deep in toward north, south, southeast. The eruptions in the sites for the Mount Kilimanjaro, now it's a dormant volcano, but in years back, it was an active volcano. Eruptions occurred in series, and they provide time for weathering and to occur in the rocks. So there is like one series and then weathering, then another series, which provide them to find some sands and gravel when they drill the wells on the site. From the geophysics, this is one work which has already been done on the site. The geophysicists went on the site on 2020 after the event occurred, and they took the data for the electrical resistivity tomography. So I presented you these 2 sections, the profile number 2 and profile number 4, which they concluded that there is a fault clear seen from the tomograph, and the other one from the tomograph profile number 4. If we see the direction of these 2 faults, they intersect each other, might be not far from the site, as we can see. So there is a structural control beneath the site itself. So the site is situated in the intersection of the faults. This is the stratigraphy from the wells. We have topsoil around 10 meters from both 2 wells. It is clearly seen. And also I got a question from this, because if we have groundwater inundation in the area and we have a thick clay soil, maybe it can be impermeable. If it's impermeable, it could maybe don't allow the water to escape to the surface, but we can also discuss about it. And as I said earlier, about the succeeding eruptions of deposition of volcanic rocks, which led to the existence of channels, which allows the groundwater to flow. As we can see in the aquifer itself, there is a weathered basalts and clay, weathered basalts and clay, which allows, and highly fractured, which allows the water to easily flow in the aquifer. So the permeability is probably too high. I did this last week about the watershed delineation. I prepared this map from the digital elevation model to see about the surface streams. And I mapped this stream. We already seen it from the Google Earth map. The river Rau, we can see it. Also, I mapped the one river, which it seems like it crosses the site, but this river is not seen on the site. It is not on the site, but I got it from the digital elevation model. So we'll also maybe have a question about this river. Maybe it's an ancient river, or it's because this part is the lowest point and they construct the stand at the lowest part of the ground, which is a problem. So we will also have a question about this river. But from the elevation profile, we can directly see that the stand itself was built just on at the lowest point of the ground. We can see from the elevation profile. So it's a problem. The available data set so far I have with water level data for 7 months from 3 wells, as I've shown you. The bore number 1, 2, and 3, just to remind you. The bore number 2 is just a little bit far. Number 1 and number 3 are inside the site. So the water level from these 3 wells, we can see them. We have the highest water level during the February, the lowest water level, sorry, during the it is the highest, sorry. We have the highest water level during the February to May, and the lowest water level recorded on this month of June, September, October, and November. And also have the rainfall data from 5 stations. I can show you the trend for the rainfall. This is just a sampling from a plenty of a time series data from 5 stations. We can see we have high rainfall during the period from April to May. Also April to May, in every year, we have a peak of rainfall. And to remind you, the events of flooding in the site occurred on June. So it's probably a response from the heavy rainfall we see in May, and then the response is on June. Maybe it can be a direct impact from the rainfall. And if this so, then the connectivity between the surface water and the groundwater means the recharge is too high. Also, I showed you the river Rau. This is the data from the river Rau. We have a peak from the river in April. Also, we have a peak in June, from May to June. As well, this may be as a result of rainfall during this period, because also we have rainfall during this time. But during the events, which was June 2020, there was no data. The data was missing because the water was the water stage on the river was too high and causing flooding of the station, recording station. So we have no data here. This is the information I have about the site, and so many questions to discuss about how I can do on the site in respect of modeling. And how I can attain the solution or more data which may be required and so forth. So I have 10 minutes and I think I used my 10 minutes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, William. Thank you, William. And John?
Just a minute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. That was very well done. Well, we should see whether other people have got ideas. Do you think, Francesca?
Yeah, maybe
a lot of
we can.
people might have questions if we all talk about it.
Okay, we can first ask if somebody has question about the presented case. And if not, we can try to, oh, there is Oluwaseun. Yes, please go ahead. Sorry for my pronunciation of your name.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm all the way from US Aberdeen, Scotland in UK. Well, William, thank you for your presentation. One of the things that I would like to say is that for you to go about this work, you need to first of all understand the hydrogeology of the area. That is how the aquifer parameters have a play. Like for you to have that water flowing on the top, could there be, there's what we call you need to understand how the water flow vertically. Could it, so that the thorough hydrogeological investigation has to be taking place so that one can help even when you are doing modeling. Then, since you are having this close to topography now, could there be that there's runoff? You can as well know the recharge from the top using simple water balance model. Whether I use, there's what we call wet pass. You can wet pass to have idea of recharge, whether the water that is coming up is either recharged from the top. There's a way to understand where the water is coming up. Is either the water that is coming from the top, or probably is it coming from the underlying aquifers? I don't know whether you got my point.
Yes, brother, I understand you.
Yeah, thank you.
So the just make sure I got it too. You're saying is the water well is the water coming from far away, or is it coming predominantly from closer? Was that the main point? Is it being transmitted a long distance, or is it fairly local, the water that's causing the flooding? Was that did I misinterpret that point?
Was this the main point of your question? And William, if you want to attempt a reply.
If I understand well, the contribution from the previous presenter just said about if the water from the site is coming from the direct infiltration in the area or is coming from the nearby aquifer. So it can be the two, either from the nearby aquifer or direct recharge from the surface. So he said, yeah, you have to understand these two scenarios, but on my thinking, I can say, based on the rainfall information we have, and based on the event itself, as we have the high rainfall on May, and the event occurred on June, a month later. So probably the response from the rainfall. So it's maybe a direct recharge, or it can be also the recharge is far, but there is a high quantity in the ground, which may take the water to the site because the site is at the lowest position.
I think that 1 month delay is a very important thing. Someone else got a question there?
Georgie, yes, please, you can switch on.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for your presentation, William. I only got a simple question about our on graphics about groundwater level, because I don't understand really that graphic. Yes, that one. What is it? In fact, I understand the dates, but I don't really understand what is in the left part of the graphic. It's water level, is descent, is drawdown. What is it?
Yes, on the left is the water level, and the bottom is the dates.
But the water level above sea level, or water level below earth?
Below the earth.
Below the earth. Okay.
Yes.
Then I understand that the highest level is in the left.
Yes. So we have the
okay.
We have the highest level. For example, here it was July. The level was high. This is the surface. 0 is the surface, and then the water level decreases, and then rise again during the April, May. It started to rise again. So this is the surface. This is the water level below the ground, -14.
And these walls were installed after the event, weren't they? So they've been put in since.
Yes. They started to take these measurements after the event. That's why it is July 2020, and the event was June. After they drilled the wells on the site.
Okay, thank you very much.
So this is weird, sounds weird. You have the lowest groundwater level in January and February, then it starts to, no, you have the main rainfall in May, right? So, all right, but this trend, this measurement doesn't seem like to be related so strongly to, this is groundwater and the level is up to the groundwater. So concerning the previous question, it seems quite clear that it is groundwater that is near the surface.
Yes.
And so all the soil is saturated, and then you might have an additional effect of runoff that doesn't find any place to infiltrate, so it gets worse. But basically, groundwater levels are very, very high. And as you said, this had never happened before in the place.
Yes.
And
there was no event like this happened here.
No event like that. And that was in coincidence with the flooding and interruption of recording at the river stage. That means also that it was an exceptional event, correct?
Yes.
So you have that gap given by the extraordinary rainfall, probably.
Yes.
And after that, you had the outflow in the station, but you didn't have that the next June, right?
Yes, I don't have that one.
Okay. But then, of course, there's the risk that after strong rainfall, you would have it again with all the problems that we can
The same problem.
Yeah.
I think we got two people with questions. I hope I'm pronouncing this rightly. Yeah.
I've learned it finally. Yes.
Oh, good. I'm sorry for my... And then there was someone else who just had their hands up as well. Yeah, keep going.
So can I go ahead and ask the question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks William for presenting your case. I have a question regarding your excavation area, because you have not provided any information about the excavation. Means you are getting the water seepages on the ground level itself, or you have excavated a basement and under certain depth you have encountered that issue? If you can explain that.
Okay. So what was happening here, this water was just coming on top of the basement, no excavation. The water was on the surface of the basement. You understand?
You are saying on the surface itself?
Yes, on the surface. There is no excavation. So the water was just flooding the building.
Okay, okay, I understand. Okay.
There is another question from Kat Standen. Yes, of course, you can go ahead. And then Bhavya.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my question was actually just related to the previous question, that when this was constructed, how deep was the excavation? And is there any chance with maybe some sort of piling that an underlying aquifer that is confined was breached? Do you see what I mean? So that there is then a pathway straight up from the groundwater, perhaps under pressure.
And respond, maybe that can be a good argument, but as you can see, this looks like a spring. It is not in either of the piles. It is just a free surface inside the building.
Sorry, is this inside the building or in
it is inside the building?
Inside the building.
Right,
Yeah.
inside the
Yes,
building.
but far from the piles.
Far from the piles that
Piles.
probably didn't cross all the clay layer.
Yes.
I don't know how deep they could be, but you have quite 10 meters of clay. And that was in the middle of the building, coming out, crossing the layer of clay that before acted as an aquifer, and now has been somehow crossed by water. Yeah. The question from Bhavya is, was there a geotechnical survey conducted before the construction?
Yes, there was a geotechnical investigation on the site, but I asked the report for the geotechnical. I didn't access it so far, but I will struggle to get it because I know I can get some information about what they did before they started the construction. But the bad thing is the situation happened when they are almost at the middle of the construction. As you can see, the building this was the time the event happened. So they just delayed for 3-4 months, and then they continued to build without finding the exact solution what to do on the site. When the water dried,
They're going to put carpets on the floor, or
when the water
put
dried,
carpets on the floor?
when the water dried, and then they continue to
yeah, but they could do a nice swimming pool in the middle of the building. That would be the best solution, I guess. Then there is Andras Jacob that would like to add a comment. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Andras. Yeah, I just have a comment based on the water levels observed in the 3 monitoring wells. What I see there is that well number 2 and well number 1 go together. And the one which is in middle, well number 3, has the highest water level. The difference is about 2 meters. So that well being in the middle, he is quite different from the other 2. So which might indicate to me that that might be a fault or somewhere that causes that different water level. I don't know how that the position of that well relates to the location where the flooding was occurring.
Right, so you would expect well 1 and well 3 to be
2
quite,
go together.
yeah, quite.
Well 3 is quite different.
Right, right.
I think that's a real good point.
Yeah. And especially, can you get back to the graph of water level?
So you can see from here that well 2, the gray one, is in what is that in February? It has quite different water levels. Of course, in June that doesn't. Let me see. Yeah, it's in July and August. It's the opposite, or maybe there is some missing data there in well number 2.
Yeah, that doesn't continue. Yeah.
But
this was drilled later. So this 2 was the first to be drilled, and then this was drilled later.
yeah, but it definitely it has a different behavior. So maybe there are some conclusions could be drawn based on that.
Okay.
Would it be interesting to see what is in June and in July and August?
Yeah.
This graph doesn't indicate that.
Are they in their correct position vertically, William? Are they leveled so that's true, that borehole 3 is 2 meter level higher than the others? That's really important if that's the case.
Where the elevation of the borehole heads precisely defined, William?
I have the elevation of the boreholes from the, I didn't put in my presentation, but there is a elevation in the report. Maybe so I can show it.
You know, according to the method that you use to estimate the ground elevation, you might have 1 or 2 meters of error that then might reflect on groundwater elevation.
Okay.
So the first thing to check is if borehole heads are precisely checked and compared. Also, the first 2 boreholes were performed together, I guess, at the same time.
Yes, yes.
So the level was taken the same day with, I don't know which method. And then the third was taken another time. So the first thing, of course, to check is that the elevation of the 3 borehole heads are consistent and taken from the same reference, topographic reference. This is
that's true, but even if the reference is a bit arbitrary, their behavior is a little bit different, and that's a real good point.
Yeah,
they're not very far apart and they behave differently, and it's not raining. So that's a good point.
Okay, thank you, Andras. Rui is asking, what are the options for avoiding flooding again? And active dewatering, drainage, galleries, other. This is the end of the meeting. And we would like to see if there is any good suggestion to give. But William was
actually, I think it's worth asking it now. Because it's a frame of reference for the other questions. Like, if you are going to have a dewatering, and if it's structurally controlled and this water level data suggests that it is, you'll want to put your dewatering bore in that structure, I would presume. So I think it's valid to ask that now and still keep on asking the other questions. So William, have they thought of what to do? And that picture, by the way, of 2 faults intersecting under the bus station is absolutely frightening. Did they know about those faults before they put the bus station there?
Were this investigation performed before, William?
No, this was performed after the
problem.
The problem. Yes.
Right. Good choice.
But just in terms of Rui's question, has anyone like you in the report that you've mentioned drainage, drainage is mentioned. Is what are the things that they're thinking of now as the way to protect the bus station from a future very wet season?
So currently they have a trench, 1 meter trench surrounding the bus station. So there is a trench surrounding the stations just to drain the water in case the water level will go high again. It was just proposed after this investigation.
Can I make a comment? Can you, William, show us the report, the step drawdown test that is in the report? And also there were also other information about the drawdown in response to pumping. And it seems that there is a huge transmissivity. Am I right?
Yes.
And in order to lower the level, I don't know, even just a couple of meters, I guess that the watering rates would be huge. While on the contrary, draining galleries, it seems that the water comes from something at a depth which is below the clay layer, as a pressure groundwater in confined aquifer that is below that found out this way. So it seems to me just it seems to me that both the watering would need a huge amount of water to be pumped out and get the level lower, and also drainage galleries would have to be. It's not feasible to do that because you have water coming not from the first 10 meters from the ground, but from the aquifer below that rises up to the ground. So it's a confined aquifer. And my question, do you know the screens of the wells? Where are they? Maybe you show them, but if you can. If you have the logs of the wells, maybe it's there, picture of the screens.
This they put a screen here.
We are still watching the PowerPoint.
Oh.
Yeah, you should share again your screen. Changing windows. Yeah. And Nico is also asking is there still flow in spring in dry season, which I understood no, right?
Yeah, there is no stream now.
And there was, Nico, there was only that event after in June 2020, never happened again. And that was the same event that caused the interruption of the recording at the river station, the river measurement station. So there was an extreme event. So all right. So the screens are starts below the clay, right? And the water level goes up to 0. The water depth goes up to 0 when they started monitoring the wells, right?
Yes.
Okay. And also in the report, if you can go to the pumping test, step down test.
The pumping test was not successful because they used a small pump, and once they take out the water, the level was not changing so much. You can see the data. The water level, the drawdown was too small.
Yeah, and that was,
You can see
how much was the discharge?
The discharge was 20
liters per second.
25 liters per second.
Yeah. And how much is the distance of this observation well from the well, pumping well?
I think they observe direct from the pumping well itself.
No, there are two series. There is one from the pumping well, and this one is from an observation well, maybe the other well. Am I right? You have
Not
this
sure.
borel
Yeah,
number two.
one's water level and the other is drawdown, maybe. I think one's just subtracted from the first entry.
Yeah.
No. There's another table on the report. If you go previous page, that is borel number 2, and this is borel number 1, pumping well and observation well. And you see that in the observation well, which is maybe, you can see up to 4 meters. No, sorry, up to 2 meters up or down. How much is it? Yeah, more or less. In the well, but we can't consider this. So it's important to know how far is the observation well from the pumping well to see if a few centimeters are how much.
I think they alternate only these two wells because there is no another well on this side. These two wells, when they pump on this well, they observe on well number 2. When they pump well number 3, they observe on well number 2.
Okay.
And these are the same wells that are in the previous map.
All right, and they are far, like how much? Just to
it is around
100 meters.
100 meters roughly.
More or less. Okay. Oh, discharge distance? No, that is the discharge distance. Okay. All right, but also there was written in the text that, yeah, so this is of course important to evaluate whatever the watering, because that would tell you if feasible without the need to pump millions of cubic meters per day. Okay, now just
there's another good question in the chat box.
Bavia, is any other place within 10 kilometers diameter of the bus station having a similar scenario, or just here, as far as you know? Thank you, Bavia. I haven't seen that.
Okay, what I can say, this is the site, and we have a spring not far from the site.
Right. And what is the other point with SP written inside the site?
This is spring. I don't know about this inside the site, but I know this Njoro spring. I know it. It is a famous spring, not far from the site.
It is an existing spring nearby.
Yes, this one.
So you have one up gradient and another down gradient.
Down gradient, yes.
And you are kind of in the middle, so you're like along something.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Structure.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right.
And another question.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about about the recharge on the area. Is it direct from the surface on the area, or there is ambient groundwater flow toward the site, as you can see from the information? Is it a
The
direct
recharge,
recharge?
yeah. Well, you would have to look at the soil and stratigraphic logs of a wider area. But if you have 10 meters of clay, it's hard that you have on-site direct recharge. And what's asking Ru is interesting, that there is this line that joins the two springs. Yeah, it's not an elevation contour because what is that? It's not an elevation contour, I guess. You know, you have on this map, you have this line that joins the two springs. And from your digital elevation model, you had that how do you say, concentrated flow runoff crosses the site. If you get your presentation, from here, you might have something in the same direction.
Just to remind the others, here we have the highest mountain, 5.9 kilometer.
Yeah.
And here it's around, from the elevation, it's 800 meter. So
right.
Here it's 800 and here it is 5.9 kilometer.
Right.
So it is a steep slope here.
Right. But there are several indication that something is going on, because you have this line from the digital elevation model, you have that line crossing the side on an old map, and you have the alignment along this line of two springs.
Yes.
So maybe I don't want to get any conclusion, but maybe that is another spring that activates just in a special occasion, and maybe 200 years ago happened again with that extreme event of recharge, and it happened again. But as you know, it's not unlikely to happen again in the future, since extreme events are increasing. So the problem is here. And the solution.
Okay, so is it time to ask what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. Well,
and what calculations are we going to make, and how much is it going to cost, William? We can come up with great solutions here, and someone else will pay the bill. Okay, got a comment here.
I think the solution could have been construct the building of bins and keep some space for drainage in between natural ground and floor level. I have witnessed similar issues in my country once, especially in the base of the mountain region. Yes, that is, you know, the other solution was not to build the place there. Okay, so
that was
but
supposed to be before.
Fill the basement with concrete. Yes.
Okay, so can we now have some realistic solutions, please? Well, maybe. Well, okay. Like it's kind of. Can I just start talking about that too? Like it's two things, aren't there? Like you said that this is in a low area,
Yes.
but to the south, there's still a southward gradient, isn't there? So there's still a topographic gradient to the south, isn't? I can see the streams there, so there must be a topographic gradient to the south. So so for just putting some things together here, so this is from what other people have asked. Does this happen all over the place? The answer is yes and no. There are a couple of springs, but water doesn't spring up everywhere. There's something unique about this place. So we could draw that conclusion. And secondly, if it's unique, it's probably going to be structurally controlled. Now that's kind of good news, isn't it? Because if it wasn't structurally controlled, there's an awful lot of water if you're going to de-water strategically, and it looks like you got a month warning. You know, if you're going to de-water, when do you switch on the pumps and how much do you pump? Now, if the water's coming from all directions, you've got to pump a lot. If the water's only coming from one direction, you've got to pump a lot less. So knowing A, if it's structurally controlled, and B, what that structure is going to be huge. And if it is a structure, and if you know where it is, it's not a very difficult calculation to know how much to pump, is it? So that's all I'll say for the moment. Is anyone, or you could have a well, and then you could have a drain that discharges into maybe 5 meter deep drain, and it can be taken somewhere, but maybe the topographic gradient's low. I mean, could this be done if it's a matter of dewatering? Could it be done passively by dumping the output of a well, which becomes artesian during the wet season, into a deep drain, which can take it somewhere else? So that's all I'll say for the moment. Does anyone else have any other comments?
I would consider drilling an additional monitoring well upstream to that point, well number 3 or whatever is it, along that stream that was identified based on the digital elevation map. Maybe that could give you a warning, because apparently that's coming from that water that was flooding. It's coming from somewhere upstream from the mountains, and as Jean said, you have a warning time of about a month based on the precipitation events and the occurrence of this flooding. So you might consider drilling another monitoring well, cross gradient from the direction of the cross gradient of the line of wells that you currently have, well number 3, 2, and 1.
Right.
So William, when they did the geophysics and you've got 2 faults there, did they look for faults elsewhere? Do they know that they're the only faults, or could there be one coming from the north, or are they sure that that's it?
Sorry, can you repeat?
So that map that you've got there with the 2 faults.
Yes.
Now, can you be sure that there aren't other faults? Why did they do the geophysics there and not in other places?
Okay, because they didn't have information about these sites, about the structure underneath. So they just designed the profiles just to go around the site. So there is more than these 2 profiles which show the faults, but there is more, like profile number 3, just to go around the site to make sure if there is any fault, they can cross-cut it. If there is any structure, they can cut that structure. And they also go far from the site, putting other profiles. So there is so many profiles. The 4 go around the site, as the site is rectangle.
Okay. There's, well, the best that can happen is that that's it. They're the structures. The worst that can happen is there are other structures, maybe that join those, like tributaries. And if there's enough structures, well, it's almost as if water coming from everywhere. But if that's it, if that's a complete map of the structures from the area, then that's a good situation. Well, it's a bad situation, but it could be a lot worse because you know where the water's coming from, eh?
Mm. Can I add something?
Yes, anyone adds something.
Okay, what Androsh said, setting up an alarm system, putting a monitoring point up gradient, that would be extremely important. But then that would not stop the rising of water level. I guess that its priority here, from my point of view, is to perform a good pumping test that can, the watering is pumping. So you have 2 wells there, and you can test the wells properly, so you can see if it is feasible with a regular pump, or if you need to increase the diameter of the well, whatever you have to do to lower the water level. I guess that this would be better than whatever model. So actually, maybe the only things to do is to do proper pumping tests in the wells which are already there. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good idea. And but I'm thinking on the other side, if we propose maybe to lower the water level through pumping, and we know before the construction there was a geotechnical survey to calculate everything about the poor pressure of the area, or for the foundation, and so lowering the water level too much, maybe the poor pressure also can be lowered. So how much water can be extracted without affecting this poor pressure?
Yeah, right. But the oscillation naturally is already more than 10 meters. So you would not lower the level more than that. You would just, let's say, cut the highest part of the rising curve of the water level. So you would not pump all the time, but just when your monitoring well tells you that something is going on, and your rainfall tells you that something is going on, and your river tells you that something is going on. So you have many ways to understand when to expect something similar to 2020. In that case, and only in that case, you activate the pumping, but you would not do anything more than what happens naturally along the season. So I don't see any problem in pressure for the stability of the building in this case, according to this pumping. That would only be to lower, to make room, let's say, to the water that is going to arrive after an extreme event, I guess. Let's see, Rui. It sounds like the decision on what to implement is very dependent on whether flooding is structurally controlled or not, and that current data is not conclusive. Francesca, my pumping test idea would help here. Perhaps other target data collection aimed at answering this first question. Yeah. About the, you mean, Rui, about the how this flooding is structurally controlled, as also John was saying. Yeah.
So, William, how much power do you have here? If you were to make a very good suggestion, would someone say, oh, thank you, William, we'll do that? Or would they say, go away and leave us alone?
Because it's a room for thinking and we still have some few minutes. I'm still thinking critically.
I'm sorry.
So before we finish, probably I'll have some comment from me.
Okay, so you will tell us all these suggestions where are going to. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, hang on. Here's a comment from Giovanni.
Giovanni, we did something similarly smart. We built an hospital in a low area. Yeah, a 200-meter trench was built to collect groundwater, and the whole structure was impermeabilized. You want to tell us something more about the case, which is similar actually? And so
yeah, it bears some similarities. That hospital was built in this low area that was at the foot of hills. That's not the Kilimanjaro. It was smaller hills, lower hills, but the problem was similar. So this low area collected superficial and groundwater from all around, and it was the wrong place to build that hospital, but it was the only available place, and maybe there was also some money aspects behind it that were a bit obscure. Anyway, the only solution that was found was to build this trench. I don't remember how deep it was, and water was actively and still is actively pumped out from this trench. And as John was suggesting, if that area was a kind of basin, so there was no way to evacuate it passively. But as John was suggesting, if this area of yours, William, has some slope, maybe you could just have someone build this trench in the upside and have it just flow passively downwards. But it also seems to me that you are lacking some data. So as Francesco was suggesting, some more data collection looks, well, mandatory before you even start to build the model and try to calculate how much this water is that flows in the site. Just my 2 cents.
I agree with that. And we've all said you need more data, but whether they've got those plans or not. And just for the sake of like, look, we're supposed to be talking about modeling. So I agree we need more data, but just say as an academic argument, we had to come up with something. And let's say that they're not going to gather more data in the immediate future. We always want more data. What calculation can we do now that could kind of give us a reasonable chance of protection? And I'd say, looking at that picture where the faults are, like the calculation is probably not too hard. If you know the hydraulic conductivity of the material in the fault, which you might have a fairly good idea from that pump test, but bear in mind, why do you get such a small drawdown over here from a pump here? Is it because it's very transmissive, or because this isn't on the structure and this is? There is a hell of a lot of ambiguity here. So, but that's coming back to the more data issue. But just say you had an idea of the transmissivity down each one of those faults, and the gradient when the water level's high, the transmissivity, therefore you know how much water's moving, therefore you know how much you got to remove. One bore in each fault pumping that amount of water. That's the best that can happen. The worst that can happen is that the water is actually coming from other places or everywhere. Then a calculation sort of saying, well, here's the worst case transmissivity for the area. here's the gradient when it's flooding, here's how much water's flowing, and now it's 10 times as much. You've either got to pump a hell of a lot from one well or put a whole lot of other wells in to capture the water. But that would be the worst case, and it's probably so bad that you've crossed a threshold where you need to gather more data before making that investment. But a short-term fix, and I'm gathering they know something here, otherwise they wouldn't have drawn that map, would be a quick calculation based on what I just said of how much water is coming down each of those faults during the flood time, and make sure you can remove that amount of water. And if it doesn't work, well, there's the proof you need more information. Does anyone want to comment on that?
Well, my comment is tied to the fact that maybe I missed something, but I haven't seen a groundwater surface map. Do you have one? Do you know where groundwater is coming from more than those 3 wells or not? Sorry if I'm having, maybe you repeat.
No, there's not. I mean, in the report, there is not. William, do you know anything about private well around and a kind of a potentiometric map that could be used?
You, Francesca, you asked him about, does he know the elevation of the wells? And the answer was not, right? So you, William, don't know what's the elevation of the water levels in the 3 monitoring wells, do you? Because, you know, if you knew...
I hope this one can be seen because we have...
yeah.
Yes, the water, groundwater direction.
If ideally you build 2 trenches, well, a trench that follows the ERT profile 2 and ERT profile 3, and you dig it 3 or 4 meters deep, and you have all the water that flows into this trench flow down following the slope of well, the superficial slope or the groundwater direction. Couldn't it be, let's say, a very rough solution to your problem? Like you want groundwater to not be over 1 meter below groundwater level, surface level. You don't want groundwater to flood the site. So you dig a trench along profile 2, a trench along profile 3, and you dig them 3 meters deep, and all the groundwater that flows in is evacuated passively if it's possible.
Okay,
if it's not.
but to bear in mind is that if that event, as you see the spring, like a spring occurred inside the site, means there lies a seepage direct below the building, not across the building, and the foundation of the building did not reach the aquifer. It is somewhere in the topsoil, in the clay. So I don't know if the trench, removing the water here and here, here and here with a trench, will resolve the problem, because you just remove the water from the topsoil, but the water was coming from the aquifer, which is below.
But wouldn't you reduce the pressure in any case?
No, but there is a 10 meters of clay from the ground.
So a trench is not a solution because groundwater flows below this clay layer?
Yes, and come up under pressure. So I guess, you know, William, this map doesn't say a lot. I mean, it's an interpretation or an hypothesis of what can be the groundwater flow, and you cannot know it up to when you don't measure depth of water in several wells around the site. I guess that is the very first step that can give you the gradient that you don't know. So you basically, in order, Darcy law, you basically need the gradient and the transmissivity to calculate Q. And you miss transmissivity because you can have an idea, yes, but you have wells, so you can estimate that a bit more through pumping test. And maybe if you have a couple of other observation well, you can also understand if the two wells are in the same, are in connection or separated by structures. But without that, the worst case would be too catastrophic, I guess, because you have to assume the very worst case. So high gradient, high transmissivity, and a huge and unsustainable dewatering discharge. In order to constrain the worst case to something that could be understood better if feasible, I guess that there's no other way except pumping test. Sorry, I love pumping tests, so, but they're always the best thing to do, especially if you already have a well. And the surrounding gradient, so you can calculate the Darcy equation. You have all the terms to calculate Q. Kat is saying, what about a simple analytic element model with 4 wells around the 4 corners and a worst case transmissivity value to keep water level beneath the base of the building and estimate Q? Yes, that could be surely done, but that would, I expect, that would provide a huge discharge to be pumped. At least looking at the lowering observed from the available drawdown time data. The worst case would assume an extremely high transmissivity, and maybe something else could be estimated, taking into account the time of response, but we don't have the complete time series of water level after the event, the extreme event or recharge, but maybe that could be processed somehow in a model, I mean. Bhavya is asking, I would like to know if you have carried out a water quality analysis of the water and seeps out and the groundwater in the surrounding. Maybe it will help in identifying the source. Yes, good. I mean, if a comparison, if you see if you have different types of water, maybe
Yes,
there was something. Yeah.
Answer that, to respond to that one, I saw in the report, they took the samples, but I didn't see any analysis for the water samples. But I see they wrote they took the sample.
And did they?
But there is no results for the analysis of water.
All right.
And also, I have a comment here from the hydrographs.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have 2020. These are the stations. We can see we have high rainfall in this month of from March, but we also have high rainfall. Probably the peak is not far in the previous year, 2019. And also 2019, in this Kibosho station, we have rainfall almost similar to 2020.
Actually, it's not similar, William, because previously of the peak in 2020, you have rainfall, while maybe it's a drier situation before the peak of May 19. So if you already start from a level, then your peak as in rising the groundwater as a bigger effect, same intensity, let's say.
Yes, what I wanted to say is the average rainfall for this month in 2019 and the average for the 2020, it can be not far. I don't know. I see like there is no a big difference.
Yeah, the two peaks are similar, but you see that previous of May 20, you have rainfall already.
From September, right?
It's like there is not actually a dry season before. I don't know if it is the normal trend, but it might be
I think yeah, it is
different
different.
from other years.
I think this for 2020 it can be seen for all stations. It is different from the previous years.
Yeah, you have long time series.
Yes, I have long time. Maybe that's
You can
what I
check
think.
that.
I was thinking is to see if there is a similar trend like what is happening in 2020, and we didn't see any spring, any groundwater flooding in the area, and why it's only happening in 2020. If there is, because I have a time series data, I will have to check that.
Yeah,
If there is a similar trend like 2020 for the rainfall and there was no the same event, maybe it can be there is another reason for the occurrence.
Yeah, you can. This is data that you already have, and you can easily process statistically to compare.
Yes.
What is different from one year to why this year is special, let's say. So
yes.
from the rainfall.
And well, you can do, I think that's a real good point, William. Now, and I think Francesca made a good point too. What makes that special? Now, how would you process it? I think you can do better than statistically. You could just use a little lump parameter bucket model. You know, something that is the most basic model of a groundwater system that you can get, where it rains on top, evaporates, and then some leaks out the bottom. And you could calibrate that model so that in 2020, and given that and the preceding rainfall, water was above a certain threshold, while in all previous years that you know that it wasn't above that threshold, you can get the parameters such that it replicates that 2020 crosses the threshold, but the other years don't. And there's your early warning system, just a simple bucket model. I think that's eminently doable, and I think basing that, you know, basing an early warning system on those rainfalls and what you know about when there was a water bubbling out of the ground and when there wasn't, that's enough to calibrate a basic bucket model. And that would be a very powerful thing.
Right, so that could be a first step. And with all data that is already available, basically.
Yep.
Yes.
And then if you couldn't acquire any more data, so that's, you could give the authorities something really good there. You say, oh, I can tell you when this is going to happen. And then something like what I was saying before, if they don't want to spend any more money and they've already got a well there, well, start pumping. Is, you know, you can do a quick calculation on what flows down those trenches. Now, you know, as Kath pointed out, the worst case scenario is a lot worse. But if it is just structure controlled, and if they're the structures, you know when it's going to happen. Pump as early as you think it might happen. You know roughly how much to pump, and maybe, just maybe, that's the problem solved.
Okay, listen, John and William, we don't have an exercise in Simple about this kind of exercise. William, do you think that we could use your data set and your case to set up an exercise in Simple and
yes,
do that
no
together?
Professor.
Yeah.
Yes, I have all of the data here. I have it. I can share it. No problem.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This would be something interesting to set up and see what happens. So we could do that together. Okay.
For example, in the geostatistics course, maybe to play with this rainfall data will be very important.
Right. Okay. All right.
There's a question. Abdallah Lim has a question.
Who? Sorry. Oh, okay. Zariab. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, William, for your great case study. And thank you for your nice discussion. I have a question. According to your geological map, there is a fault that surrounded the study area on slide 5, I think. Yes. There is a fault surrounded the study area, but the two other faults that you have shown on the other maps here is not showing.
Yes.
Just I want to add more regarding to know the groundwater flow on two new explored faults. You can use dye tracer to understand the groundwater flow and inject a dye tracer and observe on the study area, on the bus station area. As Professor John mentioned it, that maybe when you install pump and pump the water on the study area, may water come from other side, and it's possible to use dye tracer test to understand the groundwater flow in the study area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
where would you inject the dye? Where would you inject the dye?
On the upper side of the study area, near the borehole 2, or maybe upper the borehole 2.
Right.
there is another suggestion, but that would hardly confirm or confute. Sometimes it's not easy to get information from tracer tests. Maybe it could be something additional, yeah, to be compared with other kind of investigation.
Actually, that's maybe not a bad, like it's so cheap. And I had colleagues who were asking a similar question. And my colleague, he was working in a basalt aquifer. He was working in Idaho, actually. And he said they poured some dye down one hole and took a leisurely stroll to the other hole. And before they got there, the dye had already arrived. And the question they were asking, are they connected? Hell yes. You know, maybe you'll find out that maybe you won't find out anything, or maybe you'll find out they're as connected as hell. So, and it doesn't cost anything. So maybe not a bad idea.
What you could gain is if you suppose what is the direction of the fault. If you succeed in having an injection point on that fault, and you find a down gradient a certain concentration, you might learn a little bit more if the flow is concentrated there or diffuse or from all over, as we were saying. So that could surely could help.
All you need is a bottle of rhodamine.
Yeah. Or salt.
To respond to the question, he asked about these two faults, and the first two identified from the geophysics, it's not seen here. So this there is a topsoil on the area, and these faults we have seen here. This is the surface mapping. So this was a geological map, surface mapping. So that fault is probably inferred. It is not seen on the surface. That's why we cannot see the faults here. We can only see with tomography.
Yeah, at this scale, you cannot have all the little structures.
Yes.
So, but just the big ones, of course. Yeah. and they just discovered after the problem, the existence, so they could not be there. Yeah.
And also, what I was thinking also is to first know how many aquifers we have in this area. If we only have this aquifer and we deal with only this aquifer, or there is nearby aquifers, which is connected with this aquifer. It can be maybe it can give something to think of. But the recharge itself, if we can see the problem happened here, and the recharge, is it direct? The recharge for this aquifer, is it direct recharge, or it gets water from the nearby aquifers? So maybe I can I can go maybe with the infiltrometer, double ring maybe to measure the infiltration. Is it correct?
But I
to know the recharge.
Sorry, if you want to understand the flow direction and the study area recharged from other aquifers, you can draw the control water table maps if it's possible. If there is any existing wells, you can measure the water table and you can draw the water table maps, and you can understand that the study area does the study area recharge from this from other aquifer or no?
Yeah, of course. You need to draw a map with all the available wells, measuring all the available wells. But given the situation, the morphological situation, I would expect that the recharge area are the upper elevation where there is infiltration, then a confined aquifer, since you are at the lower part, and water comes up to the level of the unconfined part of the aquifer. So when you have water flowing out, you have an elevation of groundwater which is above ground elevation. So that recharge area of that level must be at a higher elevation, so you can have confining conditions. And then springs, those you have along that line, and this one that probably is activated just when the elevation rises up to a certain point. This is what I can imagine at the moment. We have 4 minutes, so so maybe William, now you can make us promises of what you're going to do. Okay.
So first I'll go and review this data from the rainfall data, and the first check, as we discussed, yes, I will check the events of this occurrence, like the 2020 events and the last year's data. That will be my first attempt, because the data I have it and I can work on it. And proposing the solution, what can be done, I think the only solution now, I think, is the well, not the trench, not the drain, is the well. But how much we can pump from the well to lower the water level once these events happen again in the next, the net amount to take out from the aquifer is still unknown. I cannot tell the discharge. Maybe I can do the pumping test to get the aquifer information, and then to build a small numerical model with a mod flow to predict how much I can take out from the well, and how many wells I will need to take the water.
All right. And now, since this is like TV series. So next time that we do the meeting on another case, we would provide updates from the previous cases. Okay, so to keep up the attention, and yeah, so it's like the suspense, and you will know how the ants goes on next time, next episode. Okay, so John, would you like to conclude?
Well, I'd just like to thank William once again for his very thoughtful presentation. I mean, you gave us a lot to talk about. There's a lot of good ideas here. There wasn't anyone who didn't suggest something that wasn't a good idea, but they only had the ability to make those suggestions based on the very good story that William told about a very sad situation. So thank you for the tragedy, William, and thank you for telling us about it so well.
Thank you.
Okay,
John.
okay. So we will see soon for at the school, and we can say goodbye to everyone. Thanks everyone for their participation and suggestion and ideas. As you have seen in the platform, there is a forum, and you can go on asking questions and telling us comments about this. Okay, and you will also find the recording of this meeting. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Thank you, John, Professor John.
Yes, Professor John.
So you have seen he's a human being like us, and so we will meet him again. Okay, okay. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
And you will receive notification about next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.